Again, thanks a lot for everybody for coming. We're really excited to do this. We do it every year, as you know. It's the 2025 State of the Truckee, where Sam Sedillo from the Nevada Department of Wildlife is going to present the findings from the biological sampling, the fall sampling that they do every year. This is summarized in the podcast that's available at renoflyshop.com, as well as anywhere you do listen to podcasts. So that you listen to podcasts, you can find it there. But Sam is going to present this information briefly, and then we'll have a question and answer after. For the people that are watching online, we'll try to put the videos and some of the slides that have a small graphs and data. We'll put that over the top, so you'll be able to see that as well. But again, thanks a lot for coming, everybody. And Sam Sedillo from the Nevada Department of Wildlife.
All right, well, thanks again for having me. Thank you, Jim, for putting this on. And yeah, basically today I'm going to be going through observations of the Truckee River from this past year's sampling that we've had. So as Jim mentioned, if you have an urgent question that needs to be answered, feel free to raise your hand. I will have time at the end to expand on a lot of these things and answer all your questions. But basically today, we're just going to dive deep into what we found through the surveys, look at some graphs, look at some pictures. I'm going to explain these things as best I can. Forgot the TV's not super huge, so I'll try and walk you through what I'm seeing with the graphs that I'm presenting. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So just a little bit about myself. I am the fisheries biologist for this region, and that includes Truckee River, Lake Tahoe, northern Washoe County, all our urban ponds here in Reno. But yeah, I've been working for NDOW since 2022. So this is my fourth field season that I just wrapped up. And I've been working with fish basically since I graduated from Colorado State University in 2014. Before this job, I was up in Truckee working for Trout Unlimited, which is a way in which I dip my hands into the fisheries world out here. And there's some really cool and unique places around here that have some really big fish. And I know a lot of you have caught those fish, but it's definitely worth protecting. And with the department, we do a lot of work specifically to manage the fisheries, whether it's for sport fish, whether it's for native fish. And yeah, I've been fly fishing also too for about 18 years now. And one thing that I like about being an angler and also a biologist is it allows for me to kind of see how the results that I'm getting from my surveys directly translate to fishing. And I know all of you guys most likely fish the river and have a connection through it that way. And it's a really unique hands-on way in which to, get your, or just get involved with fishing in this area. So program goals, I'm gonna do a real quick NDOW overview, talk a little bit about what we do, not only here around the Truckee River, but also throughout the state and how we achieve our goals for management. I'm going to go through the Truckee River surveys, give you an overview on what we found, what I saw, some observations that I made, and kind of a little bit more in depth to how I get to those observations. And then at the end too, I'll have some additional updates as well for you on other waters that you can fish and how to get involved not only with NDOW, but just in the community overall. And then afterwards, I'll have an open forum and questions that you can ask me whatever you want. Maybe not whatever, but almost whatever. So NDOW's mission is to protect, conserve, manage, and restore wildlife and its habitat for the aesthetic, scientific, educational, recreational, and economic benefits to the citizens of Nevada and the United States. So from there, how do we do that with fisheries? With fisheries, we work to enhance not only our sport fisheries, but our native fisheries here in the state. And that often can conflict with each other because native fish, a lot of times aren't those fish that you go out and target. So we have to weigh the different options for fisheries that are unique, whether it's for native fish values or for sport fish values. And how do we do this? We do this through surveys, which like what I'll be talking about today, the Truckee River surveys. We sample the fish, get numbers, look at the population size, health of the fish, assemblage of the fish within the water. We do this through regulations, so setting regulations for certain waters, whether that's catch and release, single barbless artificial only, whether that's like a 5-fish take. So we do this varying water to water. We do this through stocking fish, so we have a variety of hatcheries throughout the state that we stock rainbow trout, brown trout, cutthroat trout, etc., and which provides increased opportunities for people to go out and catch fish in areas that they might not have a good opportunity to. We do this through restoration and treatment projects. So sometimes we'll go in and completely remove fish from a fishery if it's deemed needed to promote things like our native fish values. And then we do this through reintroduction, so actually putting fish back in certain waters as well. So the Truckee River trout fishery overview. So a lot of you probably already know these things, but it's one of Nevada's premier coldwater fisheries. And the thing that makes it unique in Nevada is we don't really have a whole lot of big trout fisheries as compared to a place like Colorado, California, et cetera. We really have the Truckee River and the East Walker River. And of those, the Truckee River is one of the few that people actually go out and raft or fish from a boat from. Truckee River has healthy populations of rainbow trout, brown trout, mountain whitefish, and a variety of other non-game fish. And the thing that makes, again, as you all know, the Truckee River unique is those fish can grow to really big sizes that often isn't seen in a lot of rivers. I fish places in Colorado and Wyoming, California, et cetera. Like, there aren't very many places where you can go out and have a chance of catching a 2-foot brown that isn't connected to a lake. So really good food in the Truckee River, really good wild fish populations. And with that being said too, it's the second most popular fishery in Nevada. So it gets a lot of usage being in such an urban environment. And that means that a lot of people have eyes on it. It's also stocked yearly for increased fishing opportunities, as you all know. The Federal Fish and Wildlife Service puts cutthroat in there, and that allows for people to have an increased chance to catch a fish at certain times throughout the year. But compared to wild fish, there's limited survival of hatchery-raised trout. But overall health and fish populations in the Truckee River are largely dependent on available water and habitat for fish. And I'll get into that here in a little bit. A little bit more, there has been a gradual decline in angling, not a whole lot, but we used to stock the Truckee River a whole lot more. It had an increase in usage during the pandemic years, but that's slightly dropped off since then. And based on the angler data that I get, whether that's through creel surveys, where I'll actually go out and talk to anglers, whether that's through our angler Dropbox forums that we have at 5 different Dropboxes throughout the river, about 60 to 70% of the people that fish the Truckee River are fly anglers, compared to 30 to 40% conventional anglers, which means that Truckee River is almost kind of self-policing in terms of the people that take fish and catch and release fish. So the biggest thing that I mentioned earlier with the Truckee River is the water that's available for the fish. And since I've been a biologist, there's actually been some really good water years, and it's made my job easy because not only does increased flow in the river create more available habitat for fish, it also allows for there to be more recruitment in the river for juvenile fish. So I'm not going to go too much in this graph, but I'll go through 3 hydrographs. This one's from 2025 this year, but again, in the spring you always get increased flows due to runoff, and that's when the rainbow trout are spawning. But you also have gotten consistent flows over the last 3 years during the spring as well. And then also during the fall especially, which is the back half of the graph, you've gotten flows around 300 to 400 CFS for the past 3 years, which means that those brown trout reds have been inundated by water, allowing for more of those fish to survive. So these are all really encouraging things for me to see and shows the Truckee River should be doing well with our survey results. But at the same time, it also makes surveying the river really difficult because the flows are a lot higher. And we'll see that here in a little bit. These are just a couple more hydrographs here that I have. Again, if you look at the spring and the fall, flows look good. You got that bump in the spring. You've got consistent flows during the fall. And again, that leads to good recruitment of fish. With the Truckee River Fall surveys, this has been going on, I'd have to ask Mike when the first time it is that it actually started, but it's been going on for a really long time. And NDOW uses 12-foot aluminum electrofishing bars that has a generator, a shock box, and probes to shock the river and evaluate population trends across different transects on the Truckee River. And these survey results that we get from the electrofishing allow us to evaluate population trends, size, and age classes of the trout on the river to see, again, how are these populations changing year to year? How should that translate to fishing, and how does that ultimately translate to management as well? So in the survey zones or locations that we do these transects, We divide it for ourselves into 5 zones. The first zone being on tribal land, which we don't do since we don't have jurisdiction over that. But the first zone would be zone 2, which we do a transect at Painted Rock down on I-80. And that habitat in zone 2 is complex, but there's a lot more slack water that you see. There's a lot warmer temperatures as you get downstream. And you get a little bit more of an assemblage of non-game fish, such as suckers, carp, dace, shiners, etc. And then as you go up, zone 3, slightly similar, but a little bit cooler water, and we've gotten some really consistent flows. We do a transect at Lockwood there, right at the boat launch. And that, again, that habitat, similar to zone 2, but you're moving farther upstream, a little bit better temperatures, and you're starting to get a little bit of an increase in size of fish. Zone 4 would be kind of our urban zone, and we do a transect at Rock Park and Wingfield Park. And in zone 4, we have really good spawning habitat, riffle habitat, pool habitat, good temperatures, and this is usually where we see our highest number of fish and best recruitment of fish. And then zone 5 is up from our urban transects all the way to the border of California. And from there, we do have the coldest water, so we do see really consistent survival of fish in zone 5. So before I get into results, I'm going to go through sampling protocol a little bit. And with our sampling protocol, as I mentioned, we have a 12-foot aluminum electrofishing barge in which we've hooked up to a generator. We have 2 probes that go off of there that generate the electricity and electrical fields, in which then goes and shocks the fish. As we're moving upstream with these probes, we have netters around the probes, and as those fish are getting sunned, they'll net the fish, get them out, put them in the holding tanks, and then once we finish a transect, which is usually from a set point all the way to the top of a riffle, or as you'll see in a little bit, kind of a hard structure that the fish can't escape from, we'll then measure, weigh, and release fish. So instead of telling you more about our sampling protocol, I do have a video that was shot thanks to our conservation education division that shows one of the transects that we're doing, shows us netting some of these fish, and I'll kind of walk you through. So I know I'm hot spotting places, but this is the Verdi Power Dam. As you're gonna see, we've got our netters here, we've got our E-barge. We're all moving upstream. There's deeper water to the right, but as we're moving, you're gonna start to see fish pop up here, and the netters go through. Everybody generally keeps in front of the boat. We're wearing those electrofishing gloves there to make sure that we're not getting shocked if we put our hands in the water. You'll see a really big brown in this holding tank here. We're constantly refreshing the holding tank in that electrofishing barge. And as you'll see, as we get closer to that structure up top, or the dam, you're gonna see a lot of fish start to pop. And I'll include this into the YouTube video as well. So yeah, you can see we're netting every single fish as well. We're not just targeting the big fish, because if we're targeting the big fish, we're not getting a good overall snapshot of these areas. I know it might be hard for the people in the back to see. As you can see, we try and get those fish out of the water as quickly as possible, a lot of the electrical fields. So if you watch here, you start to see a lot of fish flashing. Thankfully, our netters did a pretty good job here getting the fish out of the water. You can see the fish popping up there. And then, yeah, as we're going, people are calling out fish. There's no sound in this video, but we're always trying to go in unison, getting those fish out of there and getting them back into our holding tank where they're not getting shocked. It is a lot of fun, but it's a really effective way to get a lot of fish. Because again, if we just use angler data or just try to do hook and line, it'd be really difficult for us to get the amount of fish that we do when we're out sampling. So one other quick video of just our sampling. There's a scenic shot of this log right here. But you'll see in a more flowing, moving stretch, here we are moving upstream. Again, we have a line of people. We have the barge below. And as we're going up, we're getting as many of these fish as possible, transferring them into the holding tank. So again, we're basically creating a wall of electricity as we're going up and sampling these fish. And then real quickly, this is our processing station here. After we finish up with sampling. The fish are still a little bit stunned. We put them in buckets in which they'll then recover. Once they're done, we'll quickly move them back into the water so they can kind of not be so stressed out. I know we get a lot of grief for using gloves when we're processing these fish, but this is a way in which we can move through these fish quickly, prevent them from moving off the table and smashing their head down below on the grounds, and allows for us to get through, every survey we get about 1,000 fish. So if we were trying to just use our hands without gloves, it would take a lot longer. The fish would more likely get stressed out, all of that. So here we're measuring, getting weights. I'm on the side of the screen that you can't see, data recording, all that. But again, you might notice this fish has been caught before. It's got a big ripped part of its mandible there. But from here, I'm going to go through each of the zones and talk about some observations we made, mainly related to fish per mile. So what do I mean by fish per mile? So our fish per mile estimates that we get, when we do our transect, we have a set distance that we go throughout that transect. We get that length. Usually I use Onyx when I'm doing iTransect. Get that length. And then from the number of fish we get, we can then extrapolate it to then equal a fish per mile estimate. I know this isn't an exact fish per mile estimate because as you may have seen in that video, the first video that I showed, there's a lot of fish that escape our electrical fields. But with that being said, every year that we do these surveys, a lot of fish escape our electrical fields. So we still get the same data year after year, whether or not we're getting all the fish in that zone. And there's a lot of escapement. So the first zone, Painted Rock, it's mainly comprised of small rainbow trout and non-game fish. We see a lot of suckers, we see a lot of shiners, but it is an important stretch of river because the LCT interface with this stretch of river when they're moving up to Derby Dam. And with that, we do want to see what the numbers of rainbow trout and brown trout are. We don't see a whole lot of change. And this graph is basically showing our fish per mile numbers from 2015 to 2025, basically from the drought to now. And as you can see, it remains relatively consistent. We're not getting huge numbers. With rainbow trout, they're in kind of the age 1 class of fish, which is anywhere from 2 to 4 inches. And those are year 1 fish. And those are mainly what we get. So with rainbow trout, this year we surveyed 71 rainbow trout per mile and basically 6 brown trout per mile, which really isn't a whole lot. I've also sampled this stretch of river in the spring with Fish and Wildlife Service when they're doing their rainbow trout and cutthroat trout surveys. And as you get farther upstream towards Derby Dam, you also get bigger fish. But farther downstream, a lot of the resident fish or a lot of the fish that you generally see are not going to be very big. But again, there are rainbow trout present in this stretch, even with those fluctuations in temperature and flow that exist, maybe to more of a degree than down low. The second zone that we have is Lockwood. And Lockwood's been one that we've seen a marked increase in fish, especially with rainbow trout, since 2020 when we started doing this transect. And with Lockwood Park, we mainly sample the stretch right from the put-in and then go upstream into that riffle. So you're getting a lot of pocket water, you're getting a lot of fast water. This year, in this zone and in Rock Park, it was a little bit unadvantageous in terms of the amount of water that was coming down. We got a big rainstorm that was basically happening during our surveys. So that does make it tougher for us to net fish. But even with that being said, we still got really high rainbow trout numbers. So we got about 880 fish per mile for rainbow trout, but we don't see a whole lot of brown trout in this riffle habitat for some reason. I will get to another sampling technique that we use for this stretch that does show that there are some really, really big fish in Lockwood. But overall, since the drought, there's pretty much a complete fish kill within this stretch, and we're seeing rainbow trout and brown trout consistently rebound. Additionally, too, we're seeing more mountain whitefish in this stretch of river. Not so much in this survey, but in one of the other ones that we did. And that just means that we're getting colder water, we're getting more consistent water, and species such as mountain whitefish they're kind of an indicator species because if water quality or temperatures aren't good, you're not going to see very many of them. So the next zone that we did was Rock Park and Winkfields. And again, these graphs, I'm sorry, they're a little bit hard to see on this TV. But with Rock Park this year, we did it during probably the worst time where the water was turning off color from the rain. We weren't able to get into the main areas that we want to sample fish. So we did see a marked decrease in fish. And with Rock Park, these are going to be the red bars for rainbow trout and kind of these dark blue bars. So kind of these ones, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but on the left-hand side of the graph. So you do see a marked decrease in rainbow trout numbers and brown trout numbers. That's kind of the thing with the survey. If conditions aren't right, you're not going to get very many fish. With that being said, Rock Park is one of the places that we get some of the biggest fish in our survey, some of the most salmonids in the survey, and usually a ton of whitefish. If I have people ask me, how do I catch whitefish for our trout slam, I usually send them to a place like Rock Park or Idlewilds, because that's a really good place to catch them. But with that being said, we do a Wingfields transect as well right down the street from here. And this year we changed it a little bit because there's the bridge construction going on, and we performed a fish salvage both on the north and south end side of the stream. Throughout the course of that, we moved probably 1,200 fish out of the construction area, whether it was rainbow trout, suckers, mountain whitefish, brown trout. And when that water was really low on the south hand side where we do our transect in the first place, we were able to get a basic survey with backpack electrofishers as opposed to a barge. And with this stretch has been exploding in numbers for rainbow trout specifically. And we're seeing a lot of juvenile recruitment, a lot of really big fish here. And again, that kind of shows with the complexity of the habitat, with the flows that exist there, you're going to get those adult fish, you're going to get those juvenile fish, basically right downtown here in Reno. So I expect to see this stretch, pending good water years, continue to produce. Be interesting to see with the new construction that happened at the bridge if that changes, but that's something that's beneficial about what we do here with these surveys is if there's a disturbance like that, we can hopefully track trends. But yeah, rainbow trout, we're at an all-time high from the past 10 years. In Wingfield, brown trout, we're consistently good as well. And we also got some really big fish as well here in Rock Park and Wingfields, even with the conditions. At Wingfields, we didn't record these in our surveys, but we did see one that was about 25.5 inches within the Wingfield stretch. So again, right downtown with that habitat that's there with the white water and all that. There's some huge fish, and they use those channels to rear as they grow from juveniles to adults. This is just a quick video. We did have to wear safety vests while we were doing our fish salvage, but the flow was super low. As we're moving upstream, you'll see us get these fish. But again, this is something that we want to see. We want to move these fish out of areas that are disturbed. We want to keep them in the river and make sure that people can continue to enjoy our great trout. So yep, here we go. Down through there, we're getting them out of the water, and then you don't see this in the video, but we then transfer them downstream. Riverbend and Verdi were two that we try and do every year. We haven't done the Verdi transect, which is that one that I showed you in the video, in a while. And the reason being the water can vary because of that diversion that exists at the dam. But with that being said, this year at Riverbend and Verdi, we saw a massive shift in having way higher numbers of whitefish in previous years to much higher numbers of trout, which again, I can't necessarily explain why that is, besides potentially the good flows that we've had. That cold water keeps them in there. The mass amounts of whitefish have evened out due to potential predation, or just the overabundance of them has slightly decreased over the years, but we're seeing really, really good numbers. In fact, at the Verdi transect, we got record high numbers for rainbow trout and brown trout, and we saw some really big fish in there. So brown trout, again, we're at 281 fish per mile at the Riverbend transect. Rainbow trout, we're at 613 fish per mile. So almost a 2 to 3-fold increase for both those transects. Mountain whitefish slightly decreased. Again, that green bar is mountain whitefish over the last 3 years. So they exploded in 2023, slightly decreasing since. And brown trout at Verdi Power Dam. So we do a transect in the fast water leading up to the dam, and then we do a transect up to the dam itself. We got 315 brown trout per mile up there, 741 rainbow trout per mile, and whitefish we're at 426 fish per mile. So again, huge number increase over the course of the last few years. We're seeing the benefit of that cold water and the good flows in the spring and the fall. And I expect the stretch to continue to be good because it's the farthest upstream location that we sample on the Truckee River. And again, this is also too where we generally tend to see some of our biggest fish. You all have probably seen this picture already, but this is biggest fish that we got on our survey this year, which is a 24-inch, 7-pound female. This was right. You didn't see it get sampled in that video that I showed you, but it goes to show this upper zone, again, with that cold, consistent water, with that deep pool habitat that it has, it can grow some really, really big fish, and it's an important stretch of river. If for some reason downstream that water gets hotter, those fish have increased mortality, they can repopulate from upstream. So what does it all mean? I just included this graph because it's just a bunch of numbers. I'm not going to make you read all those. But basically, over the past few years, since I started in 2022, we really didn't have super high trout per mile. We did see a lot of salmonids per mile, which includes mountain whitefish. But over the past few years, we've seen a marked increase in the trout that we're seeing in each stretch of the river comparatively to other salmonids, which is just mountain whitefish. So again, I attribute this to, again, like I mentioned, the flows, the habitat that they've been occupying, that really good spring and fall runoff, the consistent inundation of their eggs that you're seeing during the fall and spring, summer events. But also too, again, as you can see, and I'll get to this here in a second, as you can see with this next graph, looking at the compositions of the salmonids from 2011 to 2025, it is really difficult overall to say this one thing attributed to the numbers that we're getting, the fish that we're getting. As you can see in 2016, with our composition, I have rainbow trout, brown trout, mountain whitefish, and cutthroat all up there. In 2016, you saw almost exclusively rainbow trout being represented in our surveys. And the reason being, the spring, you're almost always going to have consistent flow. You're almost always going to get recruitment, whereas during the fall, you're still not going to be getting water during those drought years, and it's going to be harder for those fish to rebound. As you move farther in, it jumps all over the place, but the fish that you're getting in the composition is going to change year to year, and you can point to some factors, like I said, with the drought for that composition shift. But for these past few years, as it's kind of evened out a little bit more to where it is now, we've had consistent flows throughout the duration of the year, and we're getting both rainbow trout, brown trout survival, and good spawning flows for them to then bring in the next class of fish. So next here, I'm not going to dive too deep into these graphs, but this is just a length frequency chart for our salmonids that we're seeing on the Truckee River. You're seeing, again, red being rainbow trout, blue being brown trout, green being green bean mountain whitefish. You're seeing really good numbers in the first two age classes, which is pretty much up to 8-9 inches. And I know a lot of people have been catching a lot more smaller fish on the river, which again, I would say directly attributes to, like I said, those good flows that have been occurring on the Truckee River. With brown trout, we definitely see them generally being the largest fish that we catch. And I think that's just an attribute of where they're sitting in the river, the type of food they're eating. They really kind of maximize all the different habitat. They eat the highest protein food in the river. Not to say that rainbow trout don't eat crayfish, but you're seeing those brown trout really dominate areas that other fish wouldn't. So I'm really encouraged by this graph. I'd expect for this, if flows continue to be good, I expect this graph to even out a little bit. You start to see more fish push up into those bigger age classes, and I expect this to hopefully allow for me to see more pictures of big fish on Instagram. So with that being said too, looking at our juvenile data for this year was really consistent with kind of the added benefit that we saw, the highest rainbow trout recruitment since 2019. And again, this is showing that, like I mentioned, time after time again, flows have been good. Those fish have been able to spawn in a variety of different habitat. And while they're changing from eggs to juveniles, again, the flows are beneficial for them to occupy habitat that's beneficial for their survival. This is a picture of some little mountain whitefish that we caught here in the Truckee River. this is this is a graph of the average size of rainbow trout and brown trout that we observe in the Truckee River in 2025. As you can see with brown trout, as you go farther upstream, you start to see those bigger individuals, which again is a correlation to good water quality, good temperatures. And even though that average size of those fish is only 9.3 inches, that's attributed to the presence of a lot of juvenile fish. You're starting to see a lot more fish in the top ends, not only from the survey results, from the pictures that we see, but also, anecdotally, going and taking a look at brown trout on the reds throughout the years. I've seen consistently bigger fish digging reds, sitting on those reds. So we are seeing good survival, and hopefully that'll translate into bigger fish being caught on the river. In terms of average rainbow trout by zone, this wasn't as directly correlated compared to brown trout, but you are seeing a lot of juvenile fish mix in with some of those bigger fish, which keeps those numbers a little bit lower. But overall, really healthy, large fish still are in the river, and we expect to see more in the future. And as I mentioned with our electrofishing surveys, we got a lot of juveniles. We do one other type of survey, which we do E-raft shocking on the river at one transect at Lockwood currently. And this type of survey that we do here really allows for us to get kind of the top end of fish because of the sampling effort. With that electrofishing barge, there's a lot of escapement. We're pushing fish upstream, and a lot of times we don't get those bigger fish because they can move faster than we can move. But when we're using our E-raft, we're basically floating down the river, shocking fish, and allowing for fish to get into our electrical current quicker. And as we're netting on this E-raft, it's easier for us to net the bigger fish. So in these surveys, we do always get a higher average size fish. And during these surveys this year, the average size fish we caught at Lockwood, basically from the put-in down to the bottom of that first really long riffle, about a mile down for the put-in. The average size of the rainbow trout that we caught was 12.5 inches, and the average size of the brown trout that we caught was 18 inches. So there's some really big, really quality fish in there. And again, one unique thing about Lockwood is there's really not a whole lot of barriers for them to just have to stay in that zone. We do shockings both sometimes in the summer and the fall in this stretch, and we see about a 50% increase in fish numbers during the fall. So as that water cools off, those fish are moving into that stretch. I can't say it's an absolute correlation right now because we've only done so many of these shockings, but that's something we saw a marked difference doing that same zone from year to year. Not only that, we got bigger fish too last year when we did it in the fall. So also too, with our E-raft shocking, this is gonna allow for us to do potentially more finer scale sampling in terms of being able to get better fish per mile numbers based off of mark recapture. We're entertaining doing this in the future. So this would give us, using the E-raft would give us better understanding of how many big fish per mile we have in the Truckee River, which I think would be useful not only for the anglers, but for how we view potential upcoming recovery management, et cetera, on the Truckee River. It's just one of the big fish that we got this year. Just really healthy, fat fish on the Lockwood stretch. This is just kind of a condition factor chart that I put up. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into the charts, but we do correlate size of the fish to the weight of the fish, which gives us a condition factor, which tells us how healthy those fish are, how big they are. We've seen a little bit of a decrease in fish conditions since 2020. But I would attribute that to you're getting a lot more smaller fish in that 200 millimeter, which is like 8 inches, all the way up into 12 inches. And those fish are a lot harder for us to weigh, get an accurate reading on them. So you're getting a lot more of those smaller fish, which vary a lot more and have generally poorer condition factors. But our big fish, especially that kind of those fish in the 20 to 24 inch range, usually have really good condition because they have switched over to that higher protein diet, bait fish, crayfish, etc. And yeah, these are just two pictures. That rainbow trout there was super tall. It's not as easy to see in the picture, but really quality fish that are basically throughout the river at this point, whether it's Lockwood all the way up into Verdi. So last few slides here. We do have LCT in the Truckee River, and I did include this picture. This was during our Lockwood sampling event. These are generally the fish, the rainbow trout in the cutthroat trout that we get in there. That LCT was stocked, and that rainbow trout down below there is wilds. But with LCT in the river, they can enter in from Pyramid Lake and naturally spawn both below Marble Bluff and above Marble Bluff. At this point, the Fish and Wildlife Service is passing both the contemporary strain cutthroat trout, which is, again, more of a Summit Lake cutthroat trout, as well as the Pilot Peak strain fish. So you're going to start to see more of those fish above Marble Bluff, whether it's the Pilot Peak or contemporary strain. Once those fish do get to Derby Dam, only 100 of them are passed and tagged above Derby Dam. And the reason being, there are currently more rainbow trout above Derby Dam than there are below, which from their perspective does mean that there's going to be an increased hybridization risk. There are rainbow trout, like I mentioned, below there as well. But currently with those 100 fish, they are tracking them, seeing how they move and interact with other fish. And with the department, we're still in the assessment phase of trying to understand how this all works in the future of these cutthroat trout. Whether it's stocked fish or stocked LCT or those fish that move into the river itself from Pyramid Lake, those fish are a benefit to anglers and do have a benefit for people that would have no other opportunity to catch a huge lake run cutthroat, and really allows for us to have this really cool resource that really exists nowhere else in the world below Derby Dam. Again, with future solutions, we're still kind of in the assessment and understanding phase. With our LCT populations, like I said, I do help the Fish and Wildlife Service. You can see one of the big fish we shocked below Derby Dam this last year. We see those, again, we're seeing those big fish move in. We're still trying to evaluate or get information from the feds on the amount of fish that are hybridizing, the benefit that they'll have to recovery, and ultimately where we go from here. But again, with the number of fish that are stocked upstream, we really don't see a whole lot of survival with cutthroat currently. But like I said, it does provide value for somebody that just wants to go out sometime in the spring when they stock, catch a fish, and have a good time. So again, we don't stock any more rainbow trout. We switched completely over to cutthroat trout that are stocked by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And ultimately, NDOW is in favor of LCT recovery, but we're still trying to understand where it fits into the Truckee River because of all the aforementioned issues, such as hybridization, such as their survival within the Truckee River, and ultimately what it might provide the Nevada public as well as the overall position that the species sits in terms of its ability to exist on this landscape. What does this all mean? Again, I've talked to you a lot about graphs, tables, figures, etc. Again, a couple of things I've mentioned already, but I'll go through them. We're seeing really good juvenile trout recruitment, which means those big fish are successfully spawning. We can hopefully see more and more fish move up to those bigger age classes. And we can see that the different age classes represented by these fish that we catch in our surveys even out and hopefully provide more opportunity for anglers. We're seeing exceptional trout per mile numbers, and currently since the 2015 drought, we're seeing more and more trout per mile, which hopefully will directly benefit fishing as well as opportunities for people to go out and enjoy the Truckee River. We're seeing good water years, again, good results, both with the juvenile fish and the adult fish that we're seeing. The shift in composition is another thing that we observed, which again, the decrease in mountain whitefish and the change to more trout that we're seeing on the river, I wouldn't say that's a big cause of concern. That's something that, again, we'll keep tracking, but mountain whitefish have been benefiting as well as the trout with the water years that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of non-native fish, such as sculpin as well. We got an exceptionally high number of sculpin this year in our transects compared to previous years. So that's exciting to see because they are affected as well by water quality, temperature, and would probably be a good pattern for you all to throw on the upper river. We're seeing, or I would expect more fish to continue to move to those upper size classes as well. Again, like I said, both of the survey data, anecdotally, reports that I'm getting from anglers, more big fish are being caught on the river. And then currently where we're sitting with the water years that we've had, we're about 4 to 5 years removed from a drought cycle on the Truckee River. So regardless of the water years that we get, we're still going to have decent flows for the next, hopefully, 4 to 5 years. And then with management moving forward, again, all this stuff, we're trying to continue to refine our surveys. Like I mentioned earlier, we might be transitioning to adding on top of the surveys that we do a little bit more fine scale estimates for fish per mile, as well as big fish per mile that we're getting. NDOW is committed to continuing to be active within the Truckee River. So whether that's sitting on water meetings, whether that's doing things like fish salvages, getting data, and then ultimately all of that goes into informing whether it's our stance on cutthroat, whether it's our stance on our sport fishery. All that data is beneficial for us. And continuing to promote the Truckee River for what it is and work with the angling community to really branch out and understand the Truckee River is a really awesome place to go out and fish, and it's a really special place to not only go yourself, but bring other people in to get excited about. So other fishing opportunities that we have in the area, I always mention these at the end of any presentation. There's great carp fishing around Reno. It's a little bit of a break from doing the trout stuff. We have a lot of urban fisheries which have things like, in this picture, catfish. We have some really big largemouth bass fisheries too. Here we have Boulder Reservoir and Wall Canyon Reservoir up in northern Washoe County, which have really, really high fish numbers and consistent fish size to them. You do have to drive a little bit, but Wall Canyon in particular has a lot of smallmouth bass, a lot of rainbow trout, and a population of wild brown trout. Boulder Reservoir is a place that people consistently catch the most fish out of any water in my region, and it's just a tiny 5-acre spot in northern Washoe County that's a good place to camp. And then Squaw Creek Granite Mountain Reservoir has probably our biggest largemouth bass in the state. If you go there, it's on private land, but you can access it via boat. Lake Tahoe, again, it's one of the places that some people fly fish, but there's a lot of opportunity there, whether it's you're fly fishing or out on a boat. So what can you do to help out with all this stuff? I mentioned we do have angler Dropbox forums along the river. Fill out our angler Dropbox forums if you're there. There's one at Idlewild. There's 2 off of Quilisi Ranch Road. There's one off of Mayberry, and there's one by McCarran Ranch Preserve. That information directly allows for me to see how people are doing on the river and how many fish they're catching, what type of fish they're catching throughout any given year. That goes into our management. So if you ever see an angler Dropbox, please fill out a form. Get involved with the community or with NDOW. There's a ton of efforts, whether it's cleanups, whether it's volunteering with us, not specifically for fishery surveys all the time, but there's a lot of opportunities to get involved with NDOW. We offer opportunities on our online website, whether that's with game, fisheries, etc. So if you ever want to get involved, go and sign up as a volunteer. And again, that allows for you all to give back to whether it's place like the Truckee River or your favorite hunting area. So also too, again, I always appreciate phone calls, information that you all give. I try and make myself available to you all to just hear about your experience on the Truckee River. And even though that's not data that I might include in my report, it allows for me to see how people are doing on the river, what they're observing. You're probably getting out there more often than I am. But yeah, feel free to talk to me afterwards if you're interested. And I would like to say, first of all, I will have a time for questions, but I would like to say thank you to the Reno Fly Shop for letting me do this and letting me chat with you all about the Truckee River. And, I gave it a grade previously on the podcast. I'd say it's based off of the survey information we got, what I'm hearing from people out on the river, and just kind of the cool opportunity to, see these big cutthroat trout move in as well. I'd say it's around an A minus in terms of the fishery overall. I know Travis gave it an A in the last podcast that he gave it, so it didn't give me a whole lot room to work with, but I'm really encouraged by the survey results, and hopefully it'll translate directly to your experience on the river. So that, I'd like to take any questions. Yes.
So Sam, those annual surveys, electroshocking surveys, go back to probably 85.
85, okay.
And realizing that the fish population numbers are really dependent on the flows in the river from year to year. Mm-hmm. We've gone through a really good water period with the reservoirs upstream. Mm-hmm. We're like drought proof for another 3 years. It's just there's a lot of potential in the next few years for those fish to do well.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to go back through that data, just salmonid numbers per mile and compare it. through
Yeah.
the years.
For sure. Yeah, I think I have back till 1995 in one of my spreadsheets. I'll have to go and manually look for them in the binders that we have out in the warehouse. But another thing too is, back in the day as well, they would stock a lot more rainbow trout and brown trout. So it's interesting to see, like, even though I have direct access to data from when they're still stocking fish, a lot of those numbers we're getting, especially in the upper zone, are even higher than they were then. So it's positive to see for the wild fish populations that we're getting. And I think it just shows how resilient those fish are when you give them a chance, give them good conditions. And, again, we really don't have to do a whole lot to manage it. We want to continue to monitor it because we can then make informed decisions. But it's an interesting place to continue to be a part of.
Good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
What's the number one fishery in the state of Nevada?
That was my question.
That's a great question. I mean, I have my bias. I like.
Well, no, not like opinion.
Oh, like Lake Mead. Lake Mead is the highest use. Yep. Sorry, I was like, oh, well, where do you like to go? What's your favorite place to go? I was like,
Where's your spot?
yeah. Hey, can you hotspot this for me? Yeah. Any other questions? Yep.
Do you communicate at all with CADFW?
CDFW?
Yeah, CD.
CADFW?
Yeah. And if so, do you notice a similar trend with the California side?
So CDFW doesn't do as consistent surveys on the Truckee River, but they do, I would say, and again, I don't want to speak for CFW, but they do understand the benefit that a wild trout fishery like the Truckee River has. So they do have a little bit more restrictive regulations on the California side. But yeah, there are put and take locations on the Truckee River as well in California, but they do, I would just say, like, they manage as a wild trout fishery. And, we have a little bit more opportunity for people to take fish here on the Nevada side. We're not seeing numbers decrease really because of that. And again, I mentioned that with the self-policing side of things, but, with the Truckee River overall, like, we want to keep it a wild trout water and keep these big fish on the landscape, and California does too.
Second question.
Yep.
This is more dumb curiosity. In one small area like that, you do your transect. How many fish? Like, what volume of fish do you find in that one area? Like in an area like this. It really depends on the stretch. While we're doing our surveys, again, kind of
Like a good piece of water.
like a good piece of water, like, probably like this area. I think the most we got was probably like 15 big fish.
Cool.
And like Rock Park being one of those places, like, you'll do one of those, and we weren't able to do it this year because the flows were so high and didn't want anybody to die or float downstream. But like some of those big riffles, you're getting a lot of really big rainbows and a few big brown trout. So again, I'm hoping that with this other sampling that we do, or if we do it in the future, like, we're able to see kind of how Nevada compares to these other states and how the Truckee River compares to these other trout waters with big fish and specifically, and be able to get accurate results instead of just doing one single pass. But yeah, it all varies. The Truckee River has really diverse habitat too. Like, again, in a 100-yard stretch of river, you're going to have some really good riffles. You're going to have pocket water. You're going to have deep pools, etc. And like, that oxygenates the water. That gives areas for trout to hold or stage during spawning, all that. So it varies, in other words. But that wasn't a dumb question. Yep.
Did you guys identify any hybrids anywhere throughout the river? I know it's tough to say.
It's tough to say. So the Fish and Wildlife Service downstream of Derby Dam is doing genetics testing for fish. There is some hybridization that goes on between fish. I think there was some fin clips taken way long ago of fish up in this area. We haven't done it in a while, but at the point right now, we're really rainbow trout are only interacting with those stocked LCT where they're not getting to the size where they're going to be hybridizing. It's not as pressing of an issue. Like, in the future, we could do a lot more of that, but I I wouldn't be surprised that some of the big rainbow trout have some remnant cutthroat genetics, but I can't say for certain until we do another of those fin clips, sampling, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, so I worked in Idaho for a while, snake, and somebody told me, and this is just anecdotal, that once they hybridize, they can't spawn after that. Is that true? They become sterile?
No, so, with the small amount of DNA that you're seeing from cutthroat in some of these rivers and places for cutbows, like they have been able to reproduce and kind of slightly decrease the total percentage of cutthroat. So they're, whether it's a few individuals are able to spawn or like next to none, there's most likely going to be some spawning success from those fish. Yes?
You mentioned 100 trout LCT get tagged at Derby Dam. Do those tags allow you to track their movements?
Yeah, so Fish and Wildlife Service does have a variety of arrays that read the pit tags as they go upstream. So some fish have made it all the way up to, Verdi. I know one was caught at Booth Street Bridge this year. I think probably most of you saw that. So they move upstream. And again, that shows there's really not a whole lot of barrier for them to move once they get above Derby Dam. Additionally, too, the Fish and Wildlife Service and that effort that I assisted with tagged rainbow trout that they sampled while they're doing that. And a few of them went all the way up to like the I-80 bridge in Verdi, and people caught them there. So the Truckee River has that resiliency because, again, if a stretch starts to degrade, whether it's temperature, flow, et cetera, those fish have the chance to move out of there. Whether or not they do is another question, but you do see massive movement in these fish, whether it's LCT or rainbow trout. Yeah.
Is NDOW considering that new waveform a barrier for fish movement?
Say that again?
That new waveform that they got down?
It remains to be seen. I'm not sure at this point. I've only seen it when, I actually haven't checked it out. I've only seen it when there's water blocked off from that south channel. I would assume that at certain times of the year, that channel on the south side will allow for fish to move back and forth pretty easily. If those fish aren't able to move above it, certainly we'll see what happens. But they'll, if those fish want to move upstream and spawn upstream and they can't, they'll probably find some areas downstream that they'll be able to do that. So remains to be seen, but that's a good question. Thank you. What the harvest rates are? When we did I'll have to go back and look at, I think it was like 5 to 10% of the fish that were caught in the angler drop box swarms were harvested. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any thought in the future of having some kind of limit on harvesting? I only say that because I know a few holes where guys live near them and harvest fish, and they harvest a lot of fish.
For sure. And again, it would be tough for us to change the regulations without a very specific reason. Let's say if more cutthroat do end up getting past above, or there's free range for cutthroat to move past, maybe we consider a regulation for a slot limit or something like that to protect those fish when they move upstream. But based off of the data that we're getting, I know it sucks to have these big fish being caught, and I don't personally like seeing it either, but it's an opportunity that a lot of people do want to have, and to take that opportunity from a lot of anglers that pay license fees and interact with the river, that would be really hard for us to justify. Well, we do have to wrap up here, but thanks for being a great audience, and hope you learned some. So thank you guys.